Hello and welcome back to another video. This video is my 2018-19 Premier League predictions. I'm going to go through the league table of how I think each team will finish and give you the reasons why I think they will finish in those positions. So let's get into it. In 20th, I think it will be Cardiff City. Now, they've just been promoted to the Premier League, and to be quite honest, I don't know how they did it. I think there was a stat last year where they had the least possession out of every single team in the Championship, and basically all they did was play long balls all season. They made 4 signings in the transfer window so far. Cunningham from Preston, Reed from Bristol, Smithies from QPR, and Josh Murphy, who does look quite promising, from Norwich. The only problem with those signings is that they don't really have much Premier League experience with those signings, and I don't think that they will have enough to stay up, and unfortunately I think they will finish bottom of the Premier League. In 19th, Huddersfield. Now, Huddersfield have made quite a few signings in this transfer window. They made Lozil a permanent signing. They got Kungolo from Monaco and Sobi from Stoke. But I think that the other teams around the bottom of the Premier League have a bit more quality than what Huddersfield do. I don't think that they have that one special player who can change the game for them if they're struggling. So I think that this season will be one season too much for Huddersfield, and I think that they will finish in 19th. And 18th, Watford. Now, Watford have made 5 signings in this transfer window. I haven't heard about any of them apart from Foster from West Brom, and obviously they lost Richarlison, which is quite a big loss for them, and they've been loitering around the bottom of the table for quite a few seasons now, but I think that this time will be the unfortunate season that they will get relegated into the Championship. So now 17th through to 15th. So in 17th, I have Wolves. They've made 3 signings: Raul Patricio, João Moutinho and Jimenez. I think the signing of Patricio and Moutinho is actually quite good. Patricio is a experienced Portuguese #1 goalkeeper. Moutinho is obviously experienced as well. I don't think he gets into the Portuguese team anymore. He might, I don't remember. But again, another solid signing in the centre of the midfield. Jimenez, I don't think I know who he is, but they've also got their own players that they've brought up from the Championship. They've got that Neves, who looks really good, and I think that they would just have enough to stay up. I think it will be close between them and Watford, between 17th and 18th, but I think the Wolves might just pip it and stay in the Premier League. 16th, Brighton and Hove Albion. They made 8 signings, but the only 2 I've seen play are Ballon and Jahanbakhsh from when I was watching the World Cup. But one thing that they do have is a really good manager in Chris Hughton, who knows his team very well and who has the backing of everybody at the club. The fans, the owner, the chairman, everybody. They all back Chris Hughton, and I think that he has the experience and the knowledge to know how to keep Brighton up. So I think in 16th will be Brighton. And then 15th, I've got Fulham. Now, Fulham have made 5 signings. They made Mitrovic a permanent signing, who helped them get promotion from the Championship last season. They got in Fabry from Besiktas, our new goalkeeper, Limachand and Seri from Nice. I think Seri was a really good buy in my opinion. I don't know how they managed to get that deal done. And they also got Andre Schürrle on a loan deal from Borussia Dortmund, who will bring Premier League experience into the squad, who will bring, creative mindset, and basically I think with those 5 signings and the likes of Ryan Sessegnon and Kearney, their captain, who they rate highly enough to give a new 5-year contract, I think that they will have enough to not be threatened by relegation. So now I'm going to do 14th to 12th. In 14th, Bournemouth, 2 signings, Brooks and Rico Salguero. I don't know either of them, but I know that Eddie Howe is a manager who knows his team. I think that he will have enough to stay up. I don't think that they will be threatened, but I don't also see them going any higher. I think that they're just the kind of team that's going to float about in mid-table, and I don't think that they will be threatened, but I also don't think that they will finish in the top half, so that's why I've put Bournemouth in 14th. In 13th, I've got Southampton. Now, Southampton had a terrible season last year. They finished 17th, I believe, and they've tried to make some changes to change that this season coming. One signing that they've made is Elyounoussi, who has always been very promising in the leagues that he used to play in. But we have to see if he can bring that quality over to the Premier League to help Southampton kind of rebuild from where they were last year. And they also signed Armstrong from Celtic, I believe, who I really don't know much about, and also Vestergaard, who again I can't comment on because I don't really know much about him. But I think that they will have an improvement on last season, so that's why I've placed them in 13th. In 12th, I've got Burnley. Now the reason why I've got Burnley in 12th is, one, they've made no signings whatsoever. Not one single player has signed for Burnley. And I think that the Europa League commitments, even if they do not qualify, I can see them still slipping down the table a little bit. Obviously last season they had a brilliant season, they finished 7th. And I think they've still got most of the players that finished 7th, but I just don't think that they've strengthened because they've made no signings, but the teams around them have, which means I see them dropping a little bit. It's not like I don't think they're going to get relegated or anything like that. I just think that they will slip down into the bottom, the second half of the table, and that's why I've placed them in 12th. Right, coming into 11th to 9th now. I've got Newcastle in 11th. They've made 3 signings. They got Key from Swansea, they signed Shah and Kennedy on loan again from Chelsea. The Kennedy signing looked good from the loan last year, and obviously they've liked what he did for them, so they've renewed it for this year. They've still got the likes of Jose Perez in their squad, and they've kept Jamal Lascelles at the back so far, so I think that they won't have any relegation threats, but also I think they would just miss out on a top half finish. Benitez, he's a good manager. I mean, there's always a bit of a worry with Newcastle about how much funds are available to him, but it looks like he is staying on again for this season. And I just see them finishing just below the top half, so that's why I've got them in 11th. 10th, I have Crystal Palace. They've only made 1 signing, who I've never heard of the player. I don't even know his name. But at the moment they have kept Zaha so far, which obviously for Palace is vital. Hodgson has raised their spirits after a terrible start to last season when they were with Frank de Boer, and he managed to get them safe and managed to build the squad morale back up. So this season, if they keep Zaha, because there's still a few days after the transfer window, I can see them finishing in 10th, which means they will finish in the top half of the Premier League. Right, in 9th, I have Leicester. Now Leicester made 4 signings: Evans from West Brom, Ward from Liverpool, Ricardo and Maddison from Norwich. But they have lost Riyad Mahrez, which obviously is a big blow. I didn't really know where to predict Leicester because they're a kind of an on and off team. Obviously they had that wonderful season when they won the league, and in the season after, obviously because of that was a fairy tale winning the league, and they kind of dropped down a bit, and now losing Mahrez. I just feel like Leicester could either finish in the top half or they could finish as low as 13th or 14th, to be honest. But at this moment in time, I have still put them in a top half position, and I've predicted that they will finish 9th in the Premier League. 8th, I've got Everton. They've made 2 signings, Richarlison and Lucas Digne. They got a new manager, Marco Silva, who obviously they wanted when they were trying to find a new manager before they brought in their manager last season. They have lost Rooney and Klaassen because they both left, but they still got players like Sigurdsson and St Tossen, who I think both would need to have quite a good season. I mean, Tosun did look good towards the end of last season, but I don't know what happened to Sigurdsson. I think with the old manager trying to play too many central attacking midfielders around in the same areas, he kind of got ghosted out. But now that Klaassen's gone and Rooney's gone, Sigurdsson should be the main creator in the Everton squad. But they've got a battle to keep hold of Pickford, because I've heard that Chelsea might be after him if they lose one of their players. But at this moment in time, Pickford's still there, and I think that they should have no problem finishing in the top half of the table, down in 8th place. Now I'm going to tell you 7th and 6th. So in 7th, I've got West Ham United. They made some really good signings, West Ham. They broke their transfer record for the signing of Felipe Anderson, who I actually think is a really good addition. I never see that transfer coming, but they pulled it out the bag. And they also got Jack Wilshere on a free from Arsenal, because obviously Wilshere's contract expired. They brought in Fabianski, because obviously Swansea got relegated, so they got Fabianski for quite a good price, 7 million. And he could possibly be their number one. It will be out of Fabianski and Adrian, I think. But not only that, they also signed the Yarmolenko from Borussia Dortmund, who has had promise, but he is 28 now, but he could still turn out to be a vital player in this new season for West Ham. And then they also brought a guy called Diop, but I don't really know much about him. But I have kept, I don't know why, I have kept a look at West Ham's pre-season games, and they have won a few, and Arnautovic has scored quite a few goals, so he should be able to help his team get into 7th place and get into that Europa League qualifying spot. Obviously Pellegrini is their manager now. He has experience in the Premier League with Manchester City. They obviously trust him because they've given him the funds to spend, and I don't think they should have a problem with getting into the qualifying for the Europa League spot. So that's why I've got West Ham in 7th. Now in 6th, I've got Tottenham Hotspur. Now the reason why I've got Tottenham to drop out of the top 4 is because, one, they've made 0 signings, not one single player they've signed, and 2, they've just built a new stadium. Now I know as an Arsenal fan how difficult it could be to move into a new stadium. They didn't play so well at the beginning of last season when they had to play at Wembley for their home games. And I just think that they will miss out. I just don't think that the fact that everybody else around them has strengthened in some kind of way, and they've not. Obviously they've still got their key players, they've not lost anybody, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Kane will always score quite a few goals, but I just think that there's going to be a sticking point for them this season where the transition between stadiums, and I don't know if they're going to sign anybody in the next week or so of the window, but so far 0 signings, and so far I think that they will finish 6th in the Premier League. Right, now in 5th, I took a bit of time to predict this, because it was out of Chelsea and another team, but I have put Chelsea in 5th because one of the reasons is they took so long to sort out their manager situation. Conte was there at the end of last season, and then they spent a month or maybe even 2 months just figuring out what they were going to do, and eventually they got rid of Conte and they brought in Sarri, and they've made 2 signings under Sarri, and now he's been taking like the pre-season tour and stuff. But there was a time where they could have got that manager situation sorted out quicker, so that Sarri could have had more time with the squad. They signed Jorginho from Napoli, who has worked with Sarri before, because obviously they were both at Napoli before at last season. And they brought Rob Green. I don't know why, or it's just a baffling signing to me. He's 38 and he's just signed for Chelsea, but at this point they are really trying so hard to keep hold of their vital players like Hazard, Courtois and Willian. Every single day there's links that they will be leaving. Hazard could be off to Real Madrid, Courtois has been linked with Real Madrid as well, Willian was linked with Barcelona, and now even Real Madrid have been coming for Willian because they feel like they've been priced out of a move for Hazard. But at this moment they have kept all of their players, well, the key players that have been rumoured to be transferred, but I think even if they will keep their key players, I just think that they will just miss out on a Champions League spot, and that's why I got them in 5th. So now I'm moving on to the top 4. Right, 4th I've got my team Arsenal. The reason why I've got my team Arsenal to move back into the top 4 is because we appointed Unai Emery really early. He came in, he signed 5 players, a few of them in the positions that we needed the most. For example, goalkeeper, centre-back, central defensive midfielder. He brought a replacement right-back, and he brought a young, promising centre-mid. The goalkeeper that we signed was Bernd Leno from Bayern Leverkusen. People have been mimicking this signing just because of a few mistakes that he's made in the last few years, but I think that every keeper makes mistakes, and he's 26, he's going into his prime as a keeper, and I think that with our new goalkeeping coaches he can improve and he can have a good season. I think that Socrates for the centre back signing, he brings leadership, he brings experience, and he's a kind of defender that won't take no messing about. He will be vocal in the defensive line, he will hard hitting tackles, and I just think that it was a good signing bringing in Socrates. We also signed Lucas Torreira for the CDM spot. Now, as soon as we got linked with him, it was around about a week into the World Cup, I started watching the Uruguay games and I started watching him closely. I can't say I'm an expert on him. I've only seen him since the World Cup in the games that he's playing, but I think he looked good in the World Cup. He's quite a small, aggressive, hard tackling midfielder who clearly wanted to challenge himself. I mean, he's still only 22, 23, and I think that with him as a defensive cover, just sitting in front of the back four, it would give the likes of Ramsey and Xhaka to create more, and so that Xhaka doesn't have to think about being the last deep lying centre midfielder, because that's where we were playing him. And obviously last season he didn't have the greatest season, but I think now that if he has someone behind him, I think that obviously he'll still have to track back and defend when we are not on the ball, but I think that it will give him a little bit more of a licence to spray the passes and create more. And then I think that Guendouzi, who is the young prospect that we signed, he looked good in our pre-season games. I thought he was going to be one that goes maybe into the youth or goes out on loan, but by the looks of it, he might be in and around the Europa League, FA Cup, League Cup squads, maybe a few games in the Premier League to get that experience. And then lastly, the last person that we signed was our replacement right back as cover for Hector Bellerin, who is Lichtsteiner from Juventus. This guy comes with bags of experience. I know people are saying, oh, he's old, he's 34, but in the games that he plays, he doesn't play like he's a 34-year-old. He still bombs up and down that right-hand flank. He always knows how to defensively position himself, and I just think that he would be a great cover for Bellerin if, say, he was to get suspended or unfortunately pick up an injury. But I think that with Emery, he's had a full squad, almost a full squad besides the World Cup players, in training since the start of July. So he's had a whole month so far of training. I think we're ahead of anybody in regards of how early we started and how many of our first team players were still ready to start training on the first day. And I just think that he will be able to guide Arsenal back into one of the Champions League spaces. In third, I've got Manchester United. Oh, wow. What can I say about Man United? They've made 3 signings. They've signed Fred, Dalot and Lee Grant. And then manager's basically been moaning for the past few weeks about not having players in pre-season. But for some reason I'm still predicting them a top 3 finish. I just think that Mourinho has a way of playing up to the media, making things seem worse than they actually are. And I just think that he loves to play mind games, and in this final week of the transfer window something's going to happen, and I think that will cement their place in the top 4 for another year. And I think that Mourinho just needs to get on with it, because we all know in the end it's all mind games. So that's why I've got Man United playing and finishing in third. Right, there's 2 teams left. And the team that I have finishing in second is Liverpool. Now this was hard to predict. Liverpool have made some very good signings in the likes of Naby Keita, Fabinho, Alisson and Shaqiri. They've spent quite big money, and I have second and first very, very close here, but I think that Liverpool will just miss out on the league. Klopp has had a good pre-season. All seems well in their camp. They've got the likes of Sturridge back in and around the team, trying to make sure that he stays fit. They've got Moreno and Klein, who Klopp seems to be working hard with to make sure that if their first choice wing backs, full-backs are injured or suspended, they've got brilliant replacements just to come in and take their places. But I think that they're just going to miss out on the league. I think that it's going to come down to the last 4 games of the season between Liverpool and the team that you would have guessed are number 1 by now. And I think that in the end, it's just going to be a little bit too much for Liverpool. And I think they're going to get picked for the title right at the death. So I have Liverpool finishing as runners-up this season. And number 1, first, the champions of the 2018-19 season, in my opinion, Manchester City. Now, they absolutely walked the lead last season. They were top by October, November time, maybe even before that, and they never dropped down again. They just carried on going, walking through the league, and they won it comfortably. But this season, I don't see that happening again. I think it's going to be a lot closer. They spent 60 million on Riyad Mahrez, who will just be a squad rotation player. If his injury is not too bad. He did pick up an injury in a pre-season game the other night. I'm not sure how bad it is, but once he does come back and gets back into it again, I think he's going to be a rotation player. They've got Sterling, they've got Sane, they've got Jesus, Aguero. I just don't think that... I mean, Mahrez will play because he's quality, but I don't think he'll play every game. So if they can go and spend 60 million on someone who is an in and out kind of player, then how can you compete with that? But they also signed another guy called Sandler. I'm not sure who that is, to be completely honest. But they have the right amount of squad depth to be able to rotate players against teams that might be a little bit lower down. They've got the mentality from last season. They just kept on winning until... obviously, they lost the game against Liverpool, I think it was, that stopped their unbeaten streak. And they've got the manager. Pep Guardiola is a brilliant manager. He masterminds each game. And I just think that they're going to be on top again. So that's my prediction. Man City to win the Premier League in 2018-19 season. Let me know in the comments how you think this season will go. Give me your bottom three, your top four, or just give me your whole table. I don't mind. I'll read the comments. I'll interact with everybody if I can. And all that's left to say is please like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.